It's time for an oil change. The engine is back together. I've run it for a bit, seen that there's no leaks and all is good. I've tested it, I've driven it, yeah, it's all good. I'm gonna replace the oil and the oil filter. And I don't know, I believe this oil has been in the engine for a year or two or three maybe, perhaps even more. What I've done, I've topped off the oil so it's completely full before I ran it now today. So it's as much fresh oil in the engine as possible. And I had some leftovers that came with the boat. So I just used that to top off the oil. And new oil really dissolves crud and stuff really well. So to give it a better chance to clean out the engine as much as possible, I put this in and topped it off. So one thing that's usually a good thing to do when you are replacing the oil is check the dipstick, how much oil there is in the engine. Now it should be at the maximum mark, which it is. And this oil looks not too bad because it's mostly new oil. It was really low when I topped it off, and that was intentionally. So now I know it's at the full mark of the engine. Then I know I should have about 5.5 liters of oil in here, and that means I know how much I could expect to get out of the engine. When you're draining the engine, instead of, you usually open the lug nut that's at the bottom, but now I'm draining it by sucking the oil out, and I could miss something. The suction pipe could be hitting something in the in the oil pan or something. That doesn't mean that means that I doesn't get all the way down to the bottom, that I don't get out everything. So I want to make sure that I get out about 5.5 liters of oil. So that's something you should keep in mind when you're using a device that sucks the oil out of the engine instead of draining it through a lug nut. If you have a factory fitted pump, that usually goes to the point where the lug nut is located, so then you're all good. So but this engine doesn't have that, so I have to do it in a more uncertain way. This here is the suction device. It uses a vacuum, and this is the tube that I use to suck the oil out, and I insert this in the hole where the dipstick goes in, as far down as I can, and I start pumping. So you see the oil is coming out, and if you're going to use this method, it's really important to run the engine first, because if not, the oil is so hard to pump out. So this is a slow process. It takes quite a bit of time, but that's the way it is. So just have to be patient. And as you can see now, the oil has reached the canister, so now it's just continuing to drain. I will pump up some new vacuum in here every now and again, because yeah, it holds a bit of vacuum when it's empty, so because there is space for a lot of air. So I just have to let this do its job, and yeah, I'll cut the camera because it's not all that interesting to watch me wait for the oil to drain. Sorry, it's a bit dark here, but this part here, that is the oil filter, and it sits in front of the engine right under the alternator. Is quite easy to get to from the front. I've put some paper towels down to collect if there is any oil that comes out. So the first thing that I do is I just loosen the filter a little bit, so I know I know that it is moving. And this one was not stuck at all, so you just easily, that was me loosening it. It was that loose actually. It was not stuck at all. A little trick that I learned a long time ago was to put an a plastic bag around the oil filter when you are removing it. And on this engine, that is a treat. It is plenty of space to get your hands around to collect the bag, so the oil will run into the bag. So now the whole filter is inside of the bag, so I can start undoing it. So this is just a standard plastic bag from the kitchen. So you have to turn the filter, turn the plastic bag, return it, and now you can see the oil is spilling out of the filter and into the bag. All of this would go into the engine bay if I didn't do this. And I hope the bag holds. It's obviously a brand new bag, so it should hold, but you never know. Now it's about to come off. And here we go. So now the oil is collected in the bag with the oil filter. So it's just a matter of getting it out of here without making too much of a mess. So I'm going to move the camera because it's a bit in the way. Now we're going to clean up the mount for the oil filter. Now the oil filter is out of the way, and if you look down at the paper towels here, this is all the mess that I made. So I guess that is a big success. So, it's not all marine engine when they're not in the boat. This is easy to do, but when you put the engine in the boat, you don't have any guaranteed access to the filter. That makes it possible for you to put a plastic bag around it, but it's worth a try. And on the Yanmar engine in this boat, it is not a problem. So I wipe off all of the excess oil. I make sure there's no bits of the paper towel left in here. And then I collect the paper towels that I used to collect my mess. I'm just gonna keep them here in place, but the oil was starting to run on them a bit. I'm not gonna attempt to wipe out the oil that's in here because there is sharp edges there, and you're likely to tear off a small tissue of the paper, and it will exit into the lubrication system and get clogged somewhere, and that's not good. So this filter has a solid gasket that sits on the filter. It doesn't rotate. If it rotates, you should not put oil on it. But this one doesn't turn. That means that it is supposed to be lubricated. So I need to find a drop of oil to put on the edge. Here we have the oil filter, and I've put some engine oil in a small cup. So I'm just putting oil on this seal with my finger. Should probably wear gloves for this, but as you can see, well, I'm not. And make sure that there's no dust or anything. This is an old filter. It's been lying in the boat for years. That's good. There's a thin film of oil on it. So I'll put some more on, because it almost seems like I'm gonna wipe that off again, because it doesn't seem clean. Kind of felt like there was some contaminant in the oil, like some dust. Didn't feel smooth as it should. So I'm wiping this off, make sure the gasket is clean. This has been sitting in the boat for years. There was a plastic sheet over here that was partially loose, so, or it could be that I've got some dirt on my finger as well. But something got in the oil on the surface, and that's not how I want it, so let's do it perfect. So now we got oil on this surface, and the surface here is clean. The surface is actually not that perfect. I was holding oil before on this type of filter, so I guess I will do it again. So just put it onto the threaded pot sticking out, and you just tighten it in till it meets some resistance, and then you give it a 3/4 of a turn or something. It feels like firm. You don't over tighten it, because that will just give you a lot of problems when you're trying to get it off the next time. So yeah, so now it's just waiting for the engine to get completely drained from oil, and that should take some time. So I'll replace the oil filter in the meantime, and that's one part to check off the list. I should also mention this engine is a 3HM35FC, and the HM engine compared to the GM engine, like the 3GM, this one has a far larger oil sump, and there's a different flywheel and some other small different bobs and bits, but it looks very much the same engine. So when I say I put 5.5 liters of oil in this engine, that is for the 3HM engine. So check the manual on your engine before you fill the oil, and make sure you don't overfill your engine, because then you could have a diesel engine run out or run off, whatever you want to call it, and that's a bad thing to happen. So don't let the oil exceed the maximum mark on your dipstick. Every now and again I have to pump up some more vacuum in this oil changing tool, but this is slow going, and I ran the engine for quite some time to get the oil as warm and as thin as possible. So yeah, you just have to have some patience, I guess. And now there is this joyful sound of air going through this hose. So that means I'm getting close. Now I moved the hose a little bit, and that sound disappeared, so there is still a little bit of oil left. So I'm just keeping the vacuum up and yeah, trying to find the last little drops of oil in here. So that is taking quite some time. Now we are getting closer. The canister is getting close to full. I think if you fill it to the brim, I guess it's about 6.5 liters, so it should be quite full. And yeah, I cannot move this suction pipe much before it starts to draw in some air. So yes, we are really close now. So now I'm just trying to twist and bend this pipe around a bit to see if I can find some oil, and I believe I found some more with the pipe in this direction. I think I just found some crud. There is some oil left, so just twisting and bending it as it starts to suck air and try to find some more oil. You have to remember, when you take into account how much oil you get out of the engine, that some of the oil that's written in the papers might go in the oil filter as well. So yeah, so sometimes you have they give you the value with and without the filter. So I don't remember exactly what it was. If it was included a filter for 5.5 liters, I believe so. So what I will do, I will top off the oil with, or put 5 liters of oil back in the engine, and I will gradually make it back to the maximum mark when I'm topping up the oil. I believe that was it. All of the oil. Ah, finally. That took forever. So here it is. There are 6 rings here, and I believe that they are symbolizing 1 liter each. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 liters. So, and we are about here, so that's close to 6.5 liters, perhaps down in this area. I mean 5.5 liters, and some of it was in the oil filter, so that should be pretty close to the full amount of oil. So to put the oil in the engine, it could be a good thing to have a funnel. This one is an okay size. There's a real narrow oil hole in it, and that takes forever. If you go a bit bigger, the size is, yeah, it's all over the place, and yeah, the hole is a little bit bigger, but not much. So what I like to do is just to make one. And here I have an old canister for some red spirits. That's perfect. So I just take a Stanley knife and cut the opening end off of it. Take some paper towels that I used to wipe the dipstick with. It's perfect. If I get some oil in here, that doesn't matter because that's what's going in here anyway. So, and then just clean out so there's no, I don't get any spirits into the oil. I guess it wouldn't harm any, but yeah, it doesn't belong there, shouldn't be there, don't want it in there. It will evaporize anyway, but yeah. So now this one is here. I picked the one that I had with the biggest hole because that sits really well into the opening on the valve cover. Now this is a 4 liter canister, and I believe that the engine wants 5.5 liters. So I'm going to put in all of this. So I'll put in a liter more of oil, I guess. Now I have about half a liter left in this container. We will use the dipstick as the deciding factor for when it's enough. So what I'm going to do now is start up the engine, let it run for a little bit, and we're going to check for leaks around the oil filter and so on, and we'll let the oil settle back down in the oil pan and check the oil level. Let's see. It seems really nice and dry. There's no sign of oil coming out here. So that's all good. Now it's time to check the oil level on the dipstick. Just wait a couple of minutes so we know that everything is settled down at the oil pan again. Now you can see the oil is shiny and nice, and I believe we are just about a centimeter or so underneath the maximum mark. And since this engine is having a slight amount of oil consumption, I will put in a little bit more oil. So I poured in some more, and then it's just to wait for a bit. I'll put in oil a couple of times, just a tad at a time. Now we'll see. Yeah, that's just about at the maximum mark, so we're gonna call that good. And this homemade funnel worked really well. So much better than the other standard ones that I had. Because it's really stuck in the hole really well. Stay tuned, and I hope I'll catch you next time. Thank you for watching.